I want to bring, as we get started, the names of some more colleagues into our circle this afternoon, and David and I will be bringing other names along the way over the course of our presentation. We both know, as I think we all know, that no human work is ever done by a single author, artist, or curator. It is always a collective that makes things happen. So when Susan Gibbons, Barbara Rockenbach, and Michelle Light tapped me to lead the effort of curating an exhibition from Yale Library at the New Haven Museum around Yale and slavery to complement the new book, I turned almost immediately to the brilliant David Jon Walker to see if he might guide the design work. I've come to know David well over the last 2 years and know that he is as generous in spirit as he is talented in graphic design. Literally not a day goes by when I'm not deeply grateful to him for his partnership and truly blown away by his design genius. Likewise, I turned early to longtime friend and collaborator Charles Warner Jr., one of the great community memory keepers in New Haven and Connecticut. Chaz not only knows a lot, he knows how to find out more. He really is a librarian in spirit, if not in professional name and in practice. Equally important, Chaz, like David, like me, knows that knowledge is only as valuable as much as it is shared with the community in order to fuel reflection and action. I'm grateful every day for Chaz's camaraderie and blessed that he has been such a close part of the work of Beinecke Community Engagement, both as a research associate throughout the summer and now continuing in helping curate this exhibition. David, Chaz, and I have worked closely throughout with a number of key colleagues, and two particularly merit mention up front, Jennifer Coggins and Hope McGrath. Jennifer and Hope shine light on truth with confidence and clarity. Their efforts have been extraordinary in the essential work of research, and they are key interlocutors in putting together all of the concepts, content, and design of the exhibition. Today, you will hear from David and me. Next Mondays at Beinecke will feature Hope McGrath talking about Black workers at Yale in the second half of the 19th century. And Jennifer and Chaz, Jennifer Coggins and Charles Warner Jr., will present about early Black students at the Mondays at Beinecke in 2 weeks on February 19th. In other words, you'll get all 5 of us who have been key in this exhibition over the next 3 Mondays at Beinecke, and we'll in that get some more glimpses into the exhibition, Shining Light on Truth, New Haven, Yale, and Slavery. This exhibition, of course, complements the forthcoming publication of the book Yale and Slavery, A History by David W. Blight with the Yale and Slavery Research Project. The book itself represents much collective effort, expertly led by Professor Blight. It includes 2 chapters and 4 interludes by Hope, chapter by me, and great extent written by Professor Blight. I think all 3 of us and everybody involved in this work know that the words in the book themselves resonate with and rest on literally generations of community memory, archive making, and scholarship. Of course, the names that matter the most are not Morand or Walker or Blight or Coggins or McGrath or Warner, or the names of any contemporary author, curator, designer, or research. Our names matter, but they don't matter the most. The names that matter the most are the names of those whose lives and work have been too long forgotten and ignored. The names and lives that we are all working to recover and recenter. For this work is all about bringing into the center of our storytelling those whose lives have always been central to history, even if the dominant culture closed its eyes to their contribution. David Jon Walker and I want to begin this conversation by centering such names and stories and remembering always with you that the work we are doing, our gathering this afternoon and all related to it, is not some mere academic exercise. This, our work, our conversation, our presence together, is real history about real people, real stories, real trauma, real resistance, real resilience, real triumph, and real struggle. There is gravity to these stories, and there is humanity in these stories and their people. David, as you will see when you come see the exhibition, and as we will give some insight to today, David Jon Walker has designed with that gravity and humanity always in mind.
So, Michael, again, thanks for presenting the opportunity to even dig into the graphic design portion or the design experience around this exhibition. And so speaking on this first slide, gravity and humanity, I remember when you first presented this list of 200 names of enslaved individuals that worked in and around Yale that were the property and commodities of administrators. I remember you asking me, what do you think would be the best way, to show these names? And I pondered for quite some time about the best way to put them up, whether it would be, a vinyl printing of the names or if they were just listed. But I really wanted to think about the best way to recognize this remarkable list of individuals in a time-honored manner of their era. And so I dug into other forms of printing and looked to the time-honored tradition of letterpress printing. And so there are and have been for years letterpress facilities and letterpress machines all over Yale's campus. Each residential college used to print their own materials. So I looked out and figured, well, I think it would be best if we got these names printed and displayed in a fashion that would honor them. So I reached out to a printer by the name of Ben Blunt in Indiana, a Black letterpress printer. And historically, like the way letterpress letters work, they're cast in metal and then assembled in a line, and then printed with ink. And it just felt best to have a letterpress printer impress these letters with ink onto this paper. And so what you see, as an example, this is the first sheet of 50 names out of the 200. And so there will be 4 sheets framed and listed on the wall.
Thank you. Institutionally, it's vital that in this work we have humility. Humility is not exactly a value that's highly prized in our contemporary society, but I might argue it matters more than ever. David Blight often says that I like to invoke Augustine, and I am a Div School grad, so let me share a few words from a contemporary translation of Augustine, and I quote, "Only by steps of humility do we ascend to the heights of heaven." And I say that because concretely, we need to acknowledge that Yale and institutional New Haven have been doing history for a long time, from the beginning of English colonial settlement. But official institutional history here and everywhere has a tendency towards hagiography. And good points, firsts, and triumphs are highlighted while bad points are ignored. We need to remember with humility that the lack of honest acknowledgement of problematic events in past histories is itself a problematic point for an institution such as ours that stands for Lux et Veritas, light and truth. So this present moment presents an opportunity for us all and institutionally to do better and to model for students and for the society in which we live doing honest history. We have to be honest in recognizing that this is not the first time, again, that Yale has written its history, far from it. But previous histories have ignored the centrality of slavery as an institution and enslaved people as people, and therefore have been incomplete. At its tercentennial in 2001, Yale was challenged by graduate students and the New Haven community to tell the full story of its relationship to slavery. And institutionally, we did not rise to the occasion then. With the contemporary research project, the book to be published in a few weeks, and related actions, this institution lives up more fully to a commitment to Lux et Veritas. As been noted and will be clear in the exhibition, we need to have humility institutionally. And part of that is to acknowledge the enormous contributions of scholars past and present to this work, and the importance of archives, and very much to honor community memory and stories along with those more formal records. And that's why the third image here, an image that you'll see in the show, an image that's so important in our town, it really embodies community memory. It is the magnificent statue designed by Ed Hamilton to honor the 29th Connecticut Volunteers, Black patriots who helped save the nation in the Civil War. Dedicated in 2008, it lists the names of those Connecticut Black heroes and represents the essential work of descendants down to the present day in keeping history alive. So with humility and honoring the gravity of and humanity of these stories, David and I want to share a bit of a preview with a focus on design of Shining Light on Truth, New Haven, Yale, and Slavery. We begin with some words from Yale alumna, great poet, president now of the Mellon Foundation, Elizabeth Alexander, who, when the National Museum of African American History and Culture opened, wrote in the Washington Post that Black history stands at the center of American history, and this country cannot begin to be understood without it. So too, New Haven, Connecticut, and Yale. We are all about providing evidence of the essential role that Black people have played from the beginning in New Haven and at Yale. So the exhibition celebrates Black resistance and Black community building, and it illuminates knowledge kept alive in archives and memory for more than 3 centuries, even when the dominant culture chose to ignore, bury, or forget. And David, I have posted on my wall, as you know, and as folks who've been through here, an email from you where you talked about our work as being that of courageously helping, and I quote, Yale and New Haven share its shallow grave, purposely untold history. Shallow grave, purposely untold history. And that really resonates with the work we're doing. I wonder if you could unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, so just thinking about the legislation that's being passed around the country to ban the teaching of such materials, it really is our charge to plant flags where to find, this material and find the knowledge and make it accessible. I remember thinking back when we actually met for the first time, it was when the Beinecke opened to the public after it was closed for COVID, and bringing my 2 high school age children to the library. And just this past week with the Walter O. Evans talk, and seeing how many people from the community were in attendance, looking at these materials from Frederick Douglass collection, and how currently in the schools, these things effectively are banned. And so it is our charge and our mission to make it possible and really, really push forward that your history is here, It may be in a place that's a little bit difficult to get to, but it's worth traveling to in order to know who you are and where you came from, and even how the place where your own feet on the soil that you stand on has been affected by your foreparents.
As you were saying that, I wanted to just sort of underscore and give a shout out to President Salovey and the folks at the Center of Yale, who in this moment are really supporting everybody in really true and meaningful ways. And what's going to happen with this exhibition, the book and leading the effort is going to be very broadly made available to the public. So just wanted to sort of say that, reflecting on the good words you just shared. In the exhibition, and you're getting some glimpses, as I think you can figure out, of some of the design scheme that David Jon Walker has put together. We use a few quotes boldly, and David, maybe you can pick up and talk about this first one that folks will see when they come into the upper rotunda at the New Haven Museum.
Yeah, so one of the challenges in any exhibition design problem is figuring out how to lead people through spaces. And initially, when you come in, you'll be stopped by Shining Light on Truth, Yale, New Haven, and Slavery, or New Haven, Yale, and Slavery. And above, you'll see this quote. It says, "We read the future by the past," which was a quote by Alexander Crummell. And so this quote in particular resonates really with me, because I was talking to Michael, I guess a couple of days ago, and saying, you know, this guy, or this citizen, Alexander Crummell, is my contemporary. And contemporary because he was recently, in the spring of 2023, conferred his degree of divinity, almost 200 years since he attended class at the divinity school. And so while it's the past, he's very much the present, because rights are now being wronged, or things that have been previously disacknowledged are now being acknowledged. So
we're not going to go into sort of reading all the text or sharing you all the images. We want you to come to the show, and we will have ways that we make the show available to those who can't physically make it to New Haven. Stay tuned for that later. And the book obviously will be available and is really the leading part of this whole effort. But we have four main pillars in the exhibition that reflect four of the main pillars in the book and in the story: the foundations, particularly economic foundations, Black resistance and community, what could have been, which really is a pillar built around the story of the 1831 proposal for a Black college in New Haven, and then very much tied to what David was just saying, memory, but memory that's not only about the past, but that's about the present and about the future. And within those four pillars, we have a number of sections. And again, this is just to give you a little bit of a teaser, and you'll be able to see these in great size, along with lots of associated images. We're using primarily reproductions of archival materials in the outer rotunda. There'll be some archival materials in an exhibition case in a gallery room from the New Haven Museum collections. And we'll shout out the New Haven Museum again, and can't do it enough. But I think David and I and all of us from Yale working on this show have been so incredibly cheered and grateful to our colleagues at New Haven Museum, who really do read the future by the past and have been so hospitable to us. This is an example of one of those pieces of archival material that you will encounter in the show. And it's one that speaks to the ubiquity of slavery, and in some ways, the ubiquity of silence about slavery in the dominant culture, memory, and history in recent decades, until really the more contemporary present. This is an ad about a man, Ralph Isaacs, who was a graduate of Yale, grandfather of another major graduate of Yale who was the congressman and who you also encounter in the show, both of whom you can encounter in the New Haven Museum. And it's an ad that lists goods he has for sale. And in sort of rank of prominence, there are sugars, Madeira, glass, and then he lists human property, human beings, enslaved Black people imported from the West Indies. Part of the work of the book, of the Yale and Slavery Research Project overall, of the exhibition, is to really remind and educate us all about the ubiquity of slavery in Connecticut, New England, New Haven, and around Yale in the 18th century, and also by us understanding the ubiquity to grapple with the ubiquity of silence about that history. And part of the work is about literally bringing the receipts. David, maybe you can talk some about that.
Yeah, so initially when you pitched the project to me and said, hey, would you mind taking a look at this and seeing if this is something you'll be interested in? I thought, one, yes, because I'm from the South, and the migration from the South, there's a myth that the North is not as embedded in this type of trade. But I wanted to know more. And in knowing more, I also thought about ways to help it be present on the minds of the viewers that come through. So thinking about this in a design direction, we talk colloquially about sharing information. And in this way, some colloquial phrases that may be used were bringing receipts or bringing the receipts, or airing laundry, or looking through the buried family albums. And in digging up, these are a good number of slave ads that were posted within the New Haven newspaper at the time. And in the head graphic, you've got the wages that were paid to owners of slaves at the time for lending out people to build Connecticut Hall. And so we did want to put the receipts out front to say, hey, this is the evidence that says these buildings were built by enslaved hands. And this is the money that was paid out, and that slavery did exist in Connecticut and in New Haven.
And from a design perspective, what we've been thinking about and always remembering is this exhibition complements a book. It's not the book. Doesn't take every page and just put it on the wall. That wouldn't be interesting or work. So we've been thinking visually about how we complement it and sometimes go beyond the book. So these scores and scores of ads will be a resource that I think really will strike people. And part of why we think that is that our great colleague, Marilyn Budney, who scanned many of these at the library, is a lifelong Connecticut resident. And one of the things she said to me was, this really told her something that she had not fully recognized before. And it gets back to David Jon Walker's point about the shallow grave of history, because these are not hidden. They're right in the newspapers, and you don't have to search hard for them. They're in every other newspaper issue in the 18th century. So bringing the receipts is going to be a big part of the show that complements and in some ways will extend upon what's in the magnificent book about to come out. And again, thinking about an exhibition, one of the key things that has been front and center, and that again, David Jon Walker, who as you're about to hear, is a type genius, but he's more than a type genius. Materiality has been a big deal as we've thought about this. You've gotten a sense of that from his comment about letterpress, but David, why don't you riff a little bit about some of what we're seeing here and about how materiality embodies the content of the show?
Yeah, so I wanted to think about the people that worked in New Haven and around New Haven and the materials that they were working with. And I wanted to honor the work of the people that were known as sweeps, which were I guess they were the workers of Yale at the time. They did everything from lawn care to laundry to cleaning and everything between. And so I wanted to, in thinking about that colloquial phrase of airing the laundry, like honor the use of fabric, honor the use of one of the crops that Yale invested in at the time, and New Haven sold goods in order to make money based on cotton. I wanted to think about fabric. And so what you see here is a test fabric that we'll be using within the exhibition to share this narrative. So it's of a consistency that would have been like a tablecloth or a runner in weight and in look. Also, there's a post that's near, Michael, that's near the courthouse, is that right?
Yeah.
There's a post near the courthouse that's been there since the 1700s, where flyers and bills used to be put up to inform residents of what was happening. It's no longer in use now because everything is digital and there are things on billboards. But I reached out to a Black lumberjack who happens to be a Morehouse grad, and he's all about sustainability, and ask him if he would provide a piece of wood that we could include in this exhibition that would also, be prominent to be used. And it would have been from a wood that would be native to the region, so elm or oak.
Now I want to go back to typography. Yale is a great place of type. David is a great person of type, and type is a way to convey dignity and gravity and humanity. And I think you will find in this show, got a sense in these slides, how important type is. And David has done a brilliant job in the design scheme for this show, using a couple of faces, including one of his own. Could you tell us more?
Yeah, so this quote by James Baldwin, "History is not the past, it is the present. We carry our history with us. We are history." You would be really surprised to learn that all of the typefaces that are used within this exhibit are by Black type designers. So the first noted African-American typographer, Joshua Darden, drew Freight and a typeface called Halyard. So Freight was drawn based on 18th century letter forms, while Freight, the body copy in this exhibition, is based on grotesque sans serifs of the 19th and 20th century, which also you see throughout like transit, New York Transit or other entities that use signage for transit. So the last one, Appeal, is my typeface that I created based on David Walker's Appeal, which was a manifesto for colored citizens to rise up against the inhumanities of slavery.
So we're just got a couple more thoughts to share, and then looking forward to conversation with Tobias and Q&A. Community and collegiality is really at the center of the book, of the exhibition, of the work we've been doing. And that manifests in a couple different ways that are shown on the screen here. On the left, you see thumbnail pictures of some of the more than 200 Black students and graduates at Yale from James W.C. Pennington in the 1830s for the next century through 1940 with Shirley Graham, Ollie Harrington, and others. Our colleagues, Jennifer Coggins and Hope McGrath and Chaz Warner and others, have been doing amazing work in bringing together these stories, and they will be in the center of a gallery room at the museum. So there's community and collegiality in bringing and uplifting these stories in a very contemporary way. David and I and Chaz and Jennifer and Hope and everybody working on this project are full of gratitude to a lot of people who are named on the right. And we trust you can't read those names because very fine print. That's sort of intentional because we want you to know there's a lot of people, and you will be able to see, not in such fine print, but in more legible print on the wall. But there really is an extraordinary number of people. And again, we can't say enough about our colleagues at the New Haven Museum who have been such great partners, and it's so exciting to work with them on this project. And we think it'll yield lots of good results and further collaborations. Also have to give thanks to Susan Gibbons and as I mentioned, President Salve, folks at the library. And as always, I've said it before, but can't say it enough, community memory is so important in this work, and giving honor and centrality to community stories along with the more formal archives, which matter and deserve respect as well, is part of this work. And sort of our last, before a couple facts, is to give you a little sneak peek. There's David Jon Walker in my office with some things that we have gotten fabricated that sort of get at how do we bring to the present and make real in its own way something, the Black College of 1831, that didn't happen. How do you make present absence in a way that gets us to think about what was, what wasn't, what could have been, and therefore what could be and should be? And in thinking about this, and Tobias might join us in the conversation, think about the documentary he did. It's a real challenge, right, with the 1831 Black College proposal, which we assume many in this audience know about. If you don't, you'll find out about it in the book, in the exhibition. And again, we've got a great documentary already out about it. But one of the reasons it may not be so well remembered is it didn't happen. So there isn't anything to point to. There it is. So we thought, and David Jon Walker, again, has realized this in typical brilliance, that one of the things a college has is a seal. And so you see the seal on the left with elements that came in conversations. Tobias and me were thinking about some stuff, kicked it around with other folks, kicked it around, gave the elements to David. And you see on the left, and you're going to see this a lot more in chairs in the exhibition, in binders. Come to the show and you'll be able to get stickers and buttons and other kinds of things. We kept the name generic, 1831 College. The line "knowledge is power" is a direct quote from the 1831 First Annual Convention of the Free People of Color in Philadelphia, which endorsed the project of a college in New Haven. It said the convention would remind the brethren that knowledge is power. You see oak leaves and acorns of trees, oak trees that are the most indigenous in Connecticut, that symbolize wisdom and strength. Acorns, of course, from small things, big things come. And then in the center, you have a combination of signs. And David, I wanted to turn to you to complete the design thinking and let folks know what they're looking at here.
Yeah, so in the center of this shield, or in the center of this seal, is a shield that features the Adinkra symbol for knowledge, as well as waves symbolic of the New Haven Harbor, and thinking about transit and how essential water is to growth. And so I wanted to put these all in combination to think about what this first HBCU actually would have looked like, and what knowledge is power could have been to the people at that time.
You're going to see this in 3 dimensions. That chair is one of a set that will be in a gallery room that will be, as it were, a reading room or a library of the 1831 college that could have been, 1831 college that wasn't. It will be a room where you're encouraged to sit and read the new book, read these stories of the 200 plus early Black students and graduates from the 1830s to 1940, read reproductions of archival materials, sit in chairs with this seal amidst these pictures and all of the great witnesses who come before us. So this is a little sneak peek and we hope it will encourage you to come to the exhibition after it opens on February 16th. And just a few details. It will be at the New Haven Museum, 114 Whitney Avenue. Admission to the museum will be free from February 16th during the run of this show. You can go to their website to find more information on hours. And David, Chaz, and I want to invite everybody, along with our colleagues at the New Haven Museum, want to invite you particularly to an opening event, more details to come, that will be on Saturday afternoon, February 17th, from 1 o'clock on at the museum, 114 Whitney Avenue. So we've been trying to give you a little bit of a teaser, and again, a teaser that Chaz, who you see here, will be joining with Jennifer Coggins for Mondays at Beinecke on February 19th. Hope McGrath will be speaking next Monday. And to close this out, some more reflection words from Elizabeth Alexander. And David, I wonder if you might offer the benediction prompted by these words.
Yeah, so I guess to close out, we are all standing here as participants in the future. We are the future that the people and persons before us envisioned with the intentionality of the work that was done. So with Dr. Alexander's words, history is ongoing, history is made, history is active, history is story upon story upon story. History is not punctuated with a period, but rather with continuing ellipses. So thank you.